Hey gang, welcome back to another video in thermodynamics. For today's video, you're in for a treat because we're going to be talking about entropy. And with entropy, we're going to talk about the second law of thermodynamics, some behind the scenes characteristics that characterize entropy for us, which are reversible processes, and then we're going to compare what a reversible and irreversible process is, and talk about what is efficiency and what a heat reservoir is. So let's start the video off with a question for you. If I have a turbine, how much energy am I going to get out of my turbine? And with my turbine, we know we want to get energy out. We've got superheated steam coming in. We'll say it's 500 degrees C, 5 bar, and exiting my turbine, I've got a stream coming out at 2 bar. Now we can theoretically pretend that maybe we have some options of what comes out. Maybe we've got saturated liquid, maybe we've got saturated vapor, or we have superheated vapor, 400 degrees C. So which one is it? Now, if we're operating in the ideal world where we're just going to try and design and get the most energy out of my system, and we look at the changes in enthalpy between my inlet state, which is almost 3,500 kilojoules per kilogram, and we look at my three different options for my outlet state, right? We go from 505 kilojoules per kilogram up to 3,277 kilojoules per kilogram. And we're thinking about, we want to get the most energy out of my turbine. Well, I probably want to get the stream that has the lowest enthalpy that's exiting my turbine, because then I have the biggest change in enthalpy and I'll get the most energy out of my system. So ideally, yeah, saturated liquid sounds great. Let's just do that. Well, the problem is that we don't get full control over what's going to be coming out. And in actuality, there are some restrictions in what stream we're going to get out and also what energy we can truly get out of our system. And there's actually a property that characterizes those restrictions, and that's called entropy. So entropy is what's going to govern the amount of energy you can ever get out of a system or the amount of energy you need to put into a system. So what is entropy exactly? So entropy is a state property. It measures the randomness and disorder of a system. So we can think about that if we're thinking about molecules in a box, we can think about the number of different configurations of those molecules within my box that create that system. So for example, if I have a box with 4 different sections in it, I've got 3 molecules or atoms in there, there's a collection of different configurations where my molecules can be in either different boxes, or I can have a different combination of molecules or atoms in different boxes. So entropy is reflecting those number of possible microscopic configurations. And that's a very specific definition of entropy and a very theoretical one. And for the remainder of the video, we're not really going to go and talk about that part of entropy. What we really want to focus on in today's video is that entropy quantifies the amount of energy in a physical system that is not available to do useful work. So that's what we're really going to focus on and care about for today, and talk about just what is entropy in general. Now, in order to talk about entropy properly and the amount of work that is not useful or not allowed to be used, we then also need to think about what is the theoretical amount of work I could ever get out of a system. And in that case, what we need to do is talk about a reversible process, because a reversible process is an ideal process where our entropy is 0. So this is a perfect system where I can get all the energy out of the process that I theoretically could. And so for a reversible process, it's got a few different characteristics that we care about. So first one, it's a process in which all driving forces for change are infinitesimally small. So we're doing very gradual changes throughout my system. The second part of a reversible process is that it's a process that progresses through a series of equilibrium states, right? So we're going to make very gradual changes throughout the entire system. The third part is that it's a process that can be returned to its original state with no net addition of heat or work. And the fourth part is that there is no friction in the process. Okay, so that is a reversible process. And what we're going to do is compare an irreversible to a reversible process. Now, as you would probably guess, an irreversible process is not a reversible process. It's what you normally would have in any system when you're performing an action, right? It's going to irreversibly happen. So we're going to look at a piston where we've got a certain amount of pressure, and then we're going to see that in the piston, we're going to see an expansion going on. So in this diagram I have, we've got 200 kPa of external pressure inside my chamber. I've got a gas, it's 400 Kelvin, 800 kPa pressure, and we've got 4 moles. So we're going to, in this case, we're going to allow our piston to get to equilibrium, and we're going to see that the piston's going to expand, right? And this is something that we've covered in a previous video on the topic. And now when we think about the amount of work we get out of the system, we can do that calculation. We know that work due to expansion or compression is equal to negative PdV. So since our external pressure is constant, it's that 200 kPa, we can pull pressure out, do a simple integration. So it's negative P delta V. Now the next part of this is that we need to substitute in, and in particular for my volumes. So we can use ideal gas law. We can rearrange so that my volume is equal to nRT over P, and we can substitute that into my equation. And since my moles coming in and coming out are the same deal with the temperature, we can pull those out and get this simplified equation for my work due to expansion. And from here we can then substitute everything in, and we find out that the work in this, the amount of work we get out is negative 9,977 joules. And as a reminder, this is an irreversible process. So now let's look in the ideal state. Let's look at something that is reversible and see how much energy I theoretically could have gotten out of my system. So in this case, we're now going to look at a reversible process. And you see it's the same setup as before. The only difference in this case is now I'm going to add sand onto the top of my piston. And the reason why is because that sand is going to prevent my piston from expanding rapidly, because we talked about that in a reversible process, we need very infinitesimally small gradual changes. And we're going to have a series of equilibrium states we are going through. So the sand is what's going to allow me to do that. And what's going to happen in this reversible process is that I'm going to gradually remove one piece of sand from my piston at a time. And so you can imagine that's going to be a very slow process. But we're going to see that we're going to get a lot more work out of this process because I gradually remove my sand and let my piston get to equilibrium at a collection of different states. And eventually, after this whole process, we will get to the final state where we've got my piston that's fully expanded to the same point as my irreversible process. So now we think like the starting point and end point are exactly the same, but the way in which we got there is a little bit different. So now let's do the calculation for how much work we got out in the reversible case. So same as before, we know that work is going to equal negative PdV, but this time, because my piston is expanding slowly, I'm removing 1 grain of sand at a time, the amount of pressure that's applied to my piston over time is not constant, and I therefore cannot pull P out of my integral. So we're going to have to redefine P some way in order to then do my integration for my work. So in this case, if we assume that we have an ideal gas inside my chamber, we can use PV equals nRT. We can rearrange for my pressure and say that pressure equals nRT over V. And now we can substitute that into my integral and perform an integration. So now that we've got my integration, we can then, since I have my volumes, I can then substitute in using the ideal gas law for my volumes. And once I substitute in, we also see that in that natural log, that nRT are the same in the numerator and denominator. So we can cancel those out, and that's going to give me this simplified version of simplified form for work, nRT ln P2 over P1. And now that we have that, we can move forward. We can substitute everything in, and when we do, and we see how much work we get, we've got negative 18,441 joules for a reversible process. Now, if you forgot, for the irreversible process, we had negative 9,977 joules. So the amount of work I got in the reversible process is almost double the amount I got in an irreversible process. And so this is where entropy starts coming into play, because we see that there's a theoretical amount of energy I could have gotten out, but there's a way lower amount that I actually get out of my system. And so entropy is going to play a role in this whole process. And this also shows us why that reversible and irreversible process, those matter, because there's a different amount of energy you can get out. So that leads us into the second law of thermodynamics. And in this law, the entropy of the universe cannot decrease. The entropy of the universe is unchanged by any reversible process, and it increases for any irreversible process. So as we said before, if it's reversible, entropy is zero. Anything irreversible, entropy is going up. And when we talk about the entropy of the universe, we can define that as the entropy of the universe equals the entropy of a system plus the entropy of the surroundings. Now, in a previous video, I talked about that there was a quick way to remember the first two laws of thermodynamics if you ever forgot. And this is a less technical version, but again, I'm just putting it out there just to help you remember the first two laws of thermodynamics. And those are, you can't get something from nothing, and it's all downhill from here. Whereas, so that means that in the first law, you can't create energy from nothing. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. And when I say it's all downhill from here, that means that my entropy is always going up. I'm always going to a lower energetic state. So hopefully, if you need a little hint to remember the first two laws of thermodynamics, you can't get something for nothing, and it's all downhill from here. So with my entropy, when do increases to entropy occur? Well, you can have an increase to entropy when a task that requires work is accomplished in a way that exceeds the minimum amount of work. One example of this is when we have a compressor, we have a gas coming in, I'm going to put work into my compressor so that my gas is coming out at a higher pressure. And this is one where theoretically I may need 100 joules of work for this to happen, but realistically it's going to take 200 joules of work to compress my gas to the desired exit pressure. On the other hand, another way in which entropy could increase is when a process is producing less work than it had the potential to produce. And this can be the opposite, where we've got, let's say, a turbine. We've got steam coming in. We're going to get a certain amount of energy out of my turbine. And that energy we're getting is less than the theoretical amount I could have gotten. Now, in these scenarios, we can think about then efficiency, right? So how much energy does the process require, or how much am I going to get out versus what theoretically could have happened? And that theoretical amount would be that reversible case, the ideal case where entropy is going to be zero. So for a compressor, that's where we're thinking about the minimum amount of work that we need to put in versus the actual amount of work we're putting in. And so in this case, the efficiency for a compressor is going to be the reversible amount of work we would have to put in divided by the actual amount of work that we put into the compressor. On the opposite side, we've got a turbine. And so the efficiency for a turbine is going to actually be the reverse, or the inverse, where it's the actual amount of energy divided by the theoretical amount of energy I could have gotten. Because in this case, I can never get more than the theoretical amount of energy. It's always going to be less. And so in both these cases, what you should recognize is that your theoretical efficiency is going to be 100%. We can't go over 100%. So if you're ever confused and not sure which way it's going to go, just think about which way it's going to cap me at 100%. So we've talked about reversible processes. We've talked a little bit about the second law of thermodynamics, and we've started broaching the subject of entropy. So what is the mathematical definition of entropy? So in this case, we have ds equals dq reversible over T, where my S is entropy, my Q reversible is the heat added to the system on a reversible path, and T is the absolute temperature at the boundary where heat transfer occurs. Now, if you want to, you could integrate this equation, and we get that the change in entropy is going to equal the integral of dq reversible over T. Now, if we look at that integrated form, I know exactly what you're thinking. Well, Dr. B, dq reversible over T, Q and T are different. I just want it to be delta S equals Q reversible over T. That's like so much easier. Why aren't we just doing that from the beginning? And this is where the caveat comes in. You can only do that if T is constant. And that's a really important piece. T needs to be constant if you're going to do that because T, like the temperature gradient, affects the rate of heat transfer. So if your temperature on one side is the same, then the rate of heat transfer is going to continue to traverse at the same rate. If your T at the boundary of heat transfer, if that T is changing, that rate of heat transfer is going to be dependent on that temperature and the temperature gradient. And if T changes, your Q reversible is no longer going to be constant, which is going to be a problem, and therefore that simplified equation is not valid. And in those situations, what needs to happen is you need a relationship between Q and T in order to be able to integrate and get your entropy. And in later videos, we'll go into some examples of how we can set this up. For now, I just want you to be aware of these nuances and caveats for that entropy equation. Now, one thing you may want to think about or assess when you're looking at your system is that sometimes you may have the surroundings and you can model them as something that's so much bigger than the system that the process has no measurable effect on the surroundings. And if that's the case, where the surroundings are so much bigger than your system, that is a situation where you can actually then say delta S equals Q reversible over T. Now, an example of when you may have a very large system that maintains a constant temperature would be a heat reservoir. This is where we have a constant temperature source or sink for energy. And with a heat reservoir, it's assumed to be so large that its temperature will not change measurably no matter how much heat is transferred to or from the reservoir. And a couple of examples of this we'll say in space are, you can have the sun, where the sun is radiating a certain amount of energy and it has a constant surface temperature, which I think is around 4,000 degrees Celsius. And you also can think about, let's say, outer space, where the background temperature of space is 3 Kelvin. Both of these entities are so big that anything that you or I do is going to be so minuscule in comparison that it will not change the temperature in either of those cases. And when that happens, your change in entropy of the reservoir is going to equal Q reservoir over T reservoir. Now, you may be wondering, Dr. B, what about if I'm not in outer space? Would I ever have a situation where I can actually do that simplification, where I can get TS equals Q over T? And the answer is yes, you could. You may have a furnace where the temperature is maintained at a particular temperature. You're heating something inside the furnace. If you're having a constant heat source coming in, that would be another example of when you can then simplify your entropy equation to delta S equals Q over T. And so I know I've talked about a lot of different topics for today, but these are all really cool and exciting things that are leading us towards some exciting things in thermodynamics. And so I want to just wrap up and summarize everything we covered in today's video, where we talked about entropy is quantifying the amount of energy that we cannot use for work. We also talked about the entropy of a universe cannot decrease. And then we gave the mathematical definition of entropy. We also talked about the entropy of the universe is equal to the entropy of the system plus the surroundings. We talked about reversible and irreversible processes, and then what comes along with it, which is our efficiencies for things like a compressor or a turbine. And finally, we talked about heat reservoirs, which are some scenarios that allow us to do a simplified calculation for entropy. And so that's everything for today's video. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.